Hi, how are you? Maybe if you're watching this video, not so good. Uh, so yeah, what I wanted to chat with you today is about this dark night of the soul. You may have heard of, or maybe you're going through it right now. It's really interesting because I thought I'd make this video when I was right in the doldrums. I'm going through it right now. And so rather than give you a false idea of what it's like after the fact when life is all more about positivity and sunshine, I thought I'd give you a real life example of a dark night of the soul, which is generally quite awful and torturous and bleak for those that are experiencing it. For those of you that don't know what it is, I don't even think I had an idea of what it was until I actually slowly started going through it. It's now been perhaps 2 years of I actually had a Kundalini awakening at the same time, at the same time as the dark night of the soul. So some signs that, first of all, what is it? How I describe a dark night of the soul in just real terms is I see it as we all have these ideas and beliefs that we've grown up with since childhood. Perhaps we had some events happen maybe when you were young and you decided that the world wasn't a safe place. You know, for example, when a lot of bad things happened in my childhood, I would say life is against me. And it seemed like no matter how hard I would try, I either, I always got caught if I did anything wrong, or I would always get blamed for things, or no matter how much effort I put into something, that it just wouldn't work out. And I started getting this belief system that life was against me. And also I had an idea growing up that from a number of events that something bad will happen. So I think that came from my father, because I think he had a real fear about money or not having enough money. And I felt like with money, if I didn't have it, then something bad would happen, that I wouldn't be supported, and these different concepts. So the interesting thing is the dark night of the soul sometimes comes into your life to illuminate these false beliefs, and it's almost like a purging of these false beliefs. And a lot of our identity, and it could be even of your identity, so say for example, if your identity is wrapped up in I have to be positive for people to like me, I have to be sweet, I have to be kind, I need to be compassionate. A lot of people on the spiritual journey have a compassionate problem, and when they actually don't feel like being compassionate, when they actually feel like being bitchy, or even just protecting themselves from energy vampires, or people that don't have their best intentions, or maybe just people that are rude to them. They think we always need to be compassionate, and it's such a joke. I need to write a book about this, even about positivity. I mean, I had a very positive father that made me feel like being emotional and negative was a horrible thing. So as a child, I became a pleaser, and I wanted my father's approval. So I would achieve. I was an overachiever. I would say I was a human doing. That was my identity. Is that my identity was tied up in what I do, and how many friends I had, or being a good friend, or being generous. really at the sacrifice of myself. And the dark night of the soul comes along, and some people can have it with, it could be generosity, it could be with productivity, that's their identity. It could be with, they're a person that doesn't get jealous. It could be they're a person that is, not selfish, right? That could be your identity. Or a person that's always punctual, a person that's always organized, a person that's always with it, always knows how to give advice to everybody, is like knows the answers, a person that knows everything. These are all examples of certain identities. A good mother, a good sister, a good friend, someone who listens, someone who's nurturing, someone who's determined. These can all be aspects of your identity. And the problem with this, when you are tied up, when your worth is tied up in that identity, so meaning I am good enough when I am positive. I am okay if I am positive. I am acceptable if I'm giving enough. I deserve love if I'm generous. You see, whenever the worth is tied up in the identity or a certain way of being or a certain action you have or a certain way of doing, well, the problem with that is it's like a prison. So it's like, I'm only okay if. I'm okay if I'm happy. I'm okay if I'm not emotional. I'm acceptable. People will like me if I'm polite and punctual and I act nice and I fold my hands like this. And I say, thank you. I'm really, thank you for cutting me off. You must be having a really bad day. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for totally disrespecting me. That makes me feel so good. It's crazy. This stuff is crazy talk. Thinking we're never going to get angry or emotional or all these feelings. So the dark night of the soul really comes to annihilate that false sense of self. It's a prison. You see, you can't be fully liberated if you're only okay if you're positive. You're only okay if you're happy. You're only okay if you're calm and cool and collective. You're only happy if you're fucking like hipster. So it comes around so it can teach you what true love, true unconditional love and consciousness is. I am consciousness. The consciousness of I am enough. I am. You understand? I am okay regardless. I'm okay if I have money. I'm okay if I don't have money. I'm okay if people like me. I'm okay if people don't like me. I'm okay if I have eczema. I'm okay if I don't have eczema. That is true liberation. See, that's why the dark night of the soul comes. It's because for us control freaks out there and perfectionists that have a lot of rules around ourselves and what's okay and what's not okay for ourselves, a lot of judgment, a lot of shame, it comes to fucking annihilate that. And this is why it's so painful. And there's a quote, like, I just love it. One of my most favorite teachers, her name's Pema Chodron. And there was a quote in her book, it's called When Things Fall Apart. But it says, only to the extent that we are exposed over and over and over again to annihilation is when we'll find the indestructible force within. And that's what this dark night of the soul is all about. It's a complete annihilation of the self. It's death to your old self, to your false sense of self. It's fucking painful. It's not this glamorous idea of enlightenment and fucking sunshine and rainbows that everybody thinks about. It's torture. And I'll explain it to you just in terms of maybe what I went through and first of all, some signs. Here are some signs that you know you're in a dark night of the soul. Well, first of all, you feel awful. It's very out of your control. Number one, very out of your control. It seems like whatever you do, no matter how hard you're trying, nothing works. Nothing works. It's like you could think of it. I'll give you an example. For myself, one of the very first things was my business dropped out. So I've always considered myself somebody who is really resilient, very charismatic. I can attract clients like that. I do Chinese medicine and I do intuitive counseling, and I've always been very creative. And after the birth of my son, first of all, I went into a stage 4 adrenal fatigue, which I've never experienced, which for someone who's really productive was a total slap to the face, because it's just, you have no energy. You can't go for a run. You can't get off the couch. You think, what's wrong with me? I mean, it was torture. You can't... You don't want to be around people. You want to isolate. Everything. You react to everything. So in this time, my business started to plummet. And it was really funny because the more I usually do maybe 1 marketing day a week, well, I was doing 3, 4 marketing days a week. I was spending my whole time marketing. The more marketing I did 4 times the amount of marketing, the worse my sales became. The worse my revenue became, the worse I would attract customers. It was crazy. And that's what I mean. It's kind of like the harder you try, the worse it gets. That's how you know you're in a dark night of the soul. 2, you react to everything. Everything becomes an issue. Because you're in a heightened state of reactivity. It's a lot of inner child work coming up. You know? For me, it's like that stage 4 adrenal fatigue I went in. Everything becomes a reaction. It's like, you know, my son would spill his Cheerios on the floor. He wasn't eating Cheerios actually at the time. I feed him vegetables for breakfast, but he spilled his cereal on the fucking breakfast on the floor, and I was like, oh my God. And somebody would cut me off on the road, and it was like I'd freak out. And it was because my bottom had fallen out. There was no grounding for me. There was no security. So if you think of anything to do with the root chakra, which is all to do with your foundation, that completely dropped out for me. So my money situation dropped out. All my sense of security, gone. My son had tremors at 4 months from severe heavy metal toxicity from myself, and I'm a nutritionist. From drinking tap water, I believe, when I was younger. High lead contamination. I do blood analysis, so I looked at his blood, and it was severely the worst case of heavy metals I've ever seen in my poor little 4-month-old. And every time I breastfed him, he would have a tremor. And I mean, swear to God, that was heart-wrenching. And you think about, you know, breastfeed your child, it's good, and all these things. So that was like another bottom for me, and the fear that came with that of something bad will happen. What if I lose my son? So all the bottom, like, you know, as a child, I had to deal with abandonment issues. And that was like a fear of abandonment, losing this little beautiful being that I had in my life. And it created a huge sense of urgency. But the more that I seemed to try, the worse things got. So that's another reason you know you're in a dark night of the soul. Just everything goes on, and it happens in, like, that's number 3, happens in groups. Like, for example, when I first gave birth, my landlord said I had to move because he wanted to, I think he just wanted to move into the place and sell it for more money. And I had saved up $15,000 to move into this place and spend that time with my son. And I spent the whole time taking my son in and out of a car and looking for places for rent. And just even, I'm a single mother, and having to move an entire house, massive house, with a little baby while I'm totally sleep deprived was torture, you know? 4, another sign you're in a dark night of the soul. I would say it challenges, it makes you embrace your shadow self. So like when, say for example, I had all these things going on, I had to move, I was sleep deprived, my baby was just very unsettled, all these things. I mean, the mothers out there, we deserve we deserve like gold stars like every single day, because there's no appreciation, you know, and you can feel very alone. So having this little bambino, I was a very much a strong, independent woman. And like even me having a baby by myself, that was a very strong, independent, bold fucking move. And man, did I have a wake-up call, because I had to embrace the shadow side, which was this weak, vulnerable, I don't know what I'm doing, I need help. You know, I never had to ask for so much help in my life. And the problem with Dark Night of the Soul, it's not like you're going to ask for help one time and then you don't have to ask for help again. Like, I'm just going to do this one time and that's it. No, it's like it forces you to ask for help over and over and over and over again till you're just like, it just reduces you to like this. It like makes sure you're totally 100% okay with being completely vulnerable, with being completely weak, with being completely needy. I had to embrace this needy side of myself that I hated. I never wanted to be needy. You know, so that's another thing. It's just like, and another side, like I had to embrace this shadow side, which was like this angry person. You know, I had all this shit go down. Like my real estate agent crashed my car and wouldn't pay for the damages. And I had 4 roommates decide to move in and then decide to move out. Talk about threatening your sense of security. And I had like a dentist that like popped my filling out and then was going to charge me for it. And I had like an eyeglass guy rip me off for like $500. I was just like endless like episodes of being taken advantage of, all of these things back to back to back to back. I thought if one more thing happens, I am going to fucking lose it. And then that next thing would happen. It was like, it just pushes you to the brink and beyond, where you think you can't even go there. You think if one more thing happens, I am dead. Like, I can't even handle it. I don't even know what I do. I'm gonna, like, some people go to suicide. It's intense. Some people don't get through a dark night of the soul. So it brought out this anger in me that I don't think I've ever fully embraced. And this bitchy side, because I had nothing left to give. I couldn't be compassionate at all. I couldn't be patient. I couldn't be compassionate. I actually had to fucking stand up for myself and protect myself. You know, I used to get taken advantage of all the time. But, I mean, see, that's the brilliance of a dark night of the soul. It forces you to change. So these are some signs of the dark night of the soul. It really pushes you to embrace this dark side of yourself. And the one of the, so what, first of all, like, what's the point? And here's the thing. The biggest thing with the dark night of the soul is it's trying to get you to a space of liberation, to a space of being able to be in the flow of life with less resistance. And it's ultimately, I mean, there's so many terms: surrender, letting go, or fuck it in Western terms, adopting a fuck it philosophy, because you're kind of forced to surrender. You don't have a choice. And it was really funny. I'll just share this one story and then I'll move on. But I remember after all these things happening and the move and my roommates moving out, and I thought, I mean, and this just talks about the Kundalini, how it's such a spiritual thing. I remember I was at a Fido store to fix my phone, which, you know, my son spilled water on my laptop, $2,000. And then this is the shit that happens. And then I was in a Fido store for like 12 hours, 6 hours for 2 days in a row. I thought I was going to lose my mind. And I remember getting into my car after doing all that work. And the rage, like, just was building. And I remember hitting the steering wheel of my car going, fuck, 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 fuck. I was so angry. And I threw my hands up to God. I said, God, I give up. You the boss. I'm done. I fully surrender. I'm done. And this is when the Kundalini fucking just, and what Kundalini is this energy that lays dormant at the base of your spine. And when it awakes, it's not what people think of as being positive and enlightenment and all these things. It's a spiritual shift. But man, it's about full surrender. And I had, the minute I threw my hands up to divine and source, I said, that's it. This ray of light shot out of my fucking head. It was like a Care Bear stare. It was like a Care Bear stare right out of my 7th chakra. It was insane. And it was like for the next 3 weeks I was wearing a helmet on my head. It was just this massive amount of energy moving. And it was really crazy after that, because whenever I would start to feel the Kundalini move in my body, wherever it was located, whether it was in my feet or in one of my chakras, it would always correlate to that chakra, whatever that meaning was. So if it was in my feet, I'd feel these waves like vroom, 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 vroom. It was like an antenna for shit. And it was like the minute I felt it in my feet or wherever, I knew something was going to go down. And it was kind of freaky in a way until I fully understood the process, because I didn't really know what was happening to me. And once I started looking into Kundalini and dark night, I realized the very first lesson, the number one lesson to just take from this video is you have to fully surrender all your power over to divine, over to the Kundalini, because that ego sense of self, that false sense of self, that aggressiveness, like the sense of self that we have in the West, that's really like goals and drive and agenda, and I am going to manifest things. That's not Kundalini energy. That's not dark night of the soul energy. It's like, sorry, you're not in charge here, and divine is in charge, and the divine's going to take the lead here. And the minute you try to put your own timing, your own agenda, your own force on the Kundalini, get ready for the rockiest ride of your life. So when I started to learn to just move into those painful feelings, move into the sadness, it was like every day I would just have to check in and say to myself, I'd wake up every morning and just say, sweetheart, how are you feeling? And I would just listen to the answers. I would just listen to see what was surfacing. Because it was like I'd wake up and I'd have my agenda and I have my job and my clients and all these things. And then I would feel this tension in my body. It was almost like anxiety or pain, and sometimes it was really intense. And it was like I couldn't even work until it was like a paralysis, until I actually addressed this pain. And so if I tried to go on with my day, I eventually got to the point it would just get stronger and stronger and stronger until I did something about it. And so I just started to do some talking to it. It was very much like that, very heart-based. And I would listen, and my little girl would sometimes say, like, I am so angry, or I am so sad. And a lot of working with the wounded child, you know, I would just sometimes sit and I would just rock. I would just rock like this. And I would say, oh my God, sweetheart, it's okay to be not okay. It's be as angry as you need to be. And sometimes I would just get in my journal and I'd just start writing and I'd just be like, fuck, shit, fuck. A lot of swear words. I've learned to be not so perfectionist about writing in my journal. And I would just have to see what would come up. And it was whatever was going on in my life. Say if my business dropped out, I would always tune in to something in my childhood. Something would come up where it would be like this deep feeling of feeling unsupported, or like something bad will happen. And I feel like, because when I was really, really young, I had a traumatic event where I was left at a house. My parents were moving from Montreal to Hamilton. And obviously they thought they left me with safe people. And I was around 2.5 or 3 at the time. And I guess the man that they left me with, the man in the family, I didn't feel safe with. I asked my mom later in my older years about this man, and she said that we were scared of him, we didn't want to hang around him, and he used to make us sit on his lap all the time, and I attracted creepy men for the rest of my life after that. Fucking creepers. And So that experience at such a young age, my mom said and I don't know if anything happened with that man, and I think there definitely something did, but just even me feeling abandoned, like left there. My mom said when she got me back, came back to get me, I was a completely different child. I went from being positive to being angry and bitter, and I started stealing. At age 7, my parents took me to the police at age 7. So stuff like that. And when you've had an experience like that, when you're so young, you get a belief system that your environment isn't safe, that the world isn't safe, that people aren't to be trusted. And something bad will happen. So when anything goes wrong in your life, there's this extreme control. It's like this sense of control to try to protect your environment and your safety. And a lot of your character gets, your whole self becomes, your whole identity is from that one moment in your life. And it works for a very long time. That control is a savior for you. It's really a savior. It's not a bad thing. It's there. It saves your life. But the Kundalini energy comes because it says, this is no longer working for you. This is a detriment now. This control. And this belief that the world is not safe and that something bad will happen is an illusion. And so for me, when that money fell out, I had this real feeling like I'm not going to be able to support my kid. Where am I going to live? Am I going to be on the streets? My business is going to go down. What are people going to think? Why am I not being successful? How am I going to pay the bills? What's wrong with me? Why are people not listening? Why are people not resonating with me? Maybe I need more education. Then it goes into this whole spiral. Maybe I need to go back to school. Maybe I need to buy a $10,000 biofeedback machine. Maybe I need to do this. I mean, even it's like the rat race that it can send you on, the paths that it can send you on, just trying to avoid or figure it out or analyze it to death. It's like I went down like a 1 month thing of like, oh, maybe I need to research schools and go back to school. And the truth of it is I just had to feel the emotions. I just had to feel these emotions, these painful things, and realize they can't destroy me. But man, does it ever feel like they're going to destroy you when you're in it? I mean, just today I was just having the same thing, but it was really funny. And this story is so crazy. I remember after doing all this marketing and nothing happened, and I was, you have a break even. I'm like, okay, if I make $700 a week. Like before, when I was making $1,500 a week, I was okay. But now I'm making $700, and I'm like, okay, I can survive at $700. But if it goes any lower, then it would go to $500 a week, and then it would go to $300 a week, and then it would go nothing a week. It was just like the bottom just kept getting lower. And I remember walking down the street, and there was this homeless man. He looked freezing, and he had his sign up, and we were outside this market, and I thought, I'm going to go get that guy a coffee. So I go and I get him a coffee and I bring it back, and I say, here you go. And he says, oh, sorry, I don't drink coffee. I say, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, okay. So I decide to reach in my pocket and I give him a 20. And I think he's like, obviously he's overjoyed. He's probably going to go get some drugs or something because he got up instantly. And then as I turn around, this man is behind me and he has a piece of pizza for him. And I'm like, wow, this homeless man makes more money in like 10 minutes than I do in an hour. And so he brings him this pizza, and he says, oh, I brought this for you. And he says, oh, what kind of pizza is it? And the guy looks at him strangely, and he says, oh, it's pepperoni and cheese. He said, oh, sorry, I can't eat that. I'm a vegetarian. Right? Like, that experience seriously just did something for me. It just woke me the fuck up. You know? Just woke me the fuck up. Because I was like, man, if this homeless person is being picky about what to eat, there is no way I am going to starve living in Canada. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, there is no way that I'm not going to be supported, that I'm not going to have something to eat, you know? And he looked happier on the street than I was. So there was something about that shift that at that moment, I was like, this belief is untrue. What I'm believing is untrue. And this fear that I am investing in of I'm not going to be supported, that something bad is going to happen, that I'm not worthy and I'm not good at what I do is a fucking lie. And I like to swear a lot because it's just so true. And when I finally surrendered and I said, okay, I'm not making money, I'm not pulling clients in. What can I do right now? What feels good? What is the path of least resistance for me? That's not forcing things. That's not trying to make things work the old way or figure it out or whatever. So I decided to look at my expenses, because at that time, I'd never in my life had to worry about how much I spent. If I wanted organic blueberries, I'd buy organic blueberries. You know, I always made a lot of money. I never had to be frugal. I would shop at Goodness Me's and different stores and that kind of thing. And I started looking at everywhere that I could cut in my life, everything that I could cut. I would call up utility companies and I would cut. I would call up, I called up my insurance companies and I saved like $800 a year. I realized I got a grant for my utility company. I think I saved like $400 a year. I looked at cheaper supplies for my business and I saved thousands a year. And I cut like supplements down. I used to spend a couple hundred on supplements because I'm curvy. My life is curvy, so I need this. And that was another surrender because that was my security blanket. So cutting my supplements was like, man, was that ever the last thing to go for me? And there's the fear. If I cut this, what I'm going to be insane. I'm going to end up in a mental hospital. So I cut that and I saved $2,400 a year. I cut practitioners. I used to spend money on practitioners. I started shopping in the market. I stopped buying organic, which was a big push. I'm a nutritionist, for God's sake. I'm supposed to buy organic. It was all of these things in my life that I thought were necessities. And I realized they weren't. They weren't musts in my life. They could be let go of. And that's what it took me. It took me down to the bare essentials. I basically cut, how much did I cut? I cut $25,000 off of my expenses a year. And then because I had time, and that's the thing, I had no clients, I had all this time to do stuff to save money. Before I would go out and spend money on things because I couldn't cook dinner or do all these. I was too busy to save money. That I ended up looking for a subsidy for childcare. At this time, I was getting a nanny, and it was putting me into debt. I spent $20,000 on childcare in my first year, and that stress of that. And I found a subsidy, and I was 100% fully subsidized for subsidy. That saved me almost $14,000 for 3 years. Every 3 years, $14,000. That was like, whatever, that's like $42,000, whatever, $43,000. My math isn't the best. But yeah, so in that 1 year, in that time where my business was the absolute lowest, I saved myself almost $40,000 a year. That was the best month I ever had. And that was all through surrender, doing nothing. So I think I'm going to stop there and just leave you with that idea of letting go of the old way and embracing this new you, which actually you don't know yet. That's the thing with the dark night. That's why it's dark, it's blind, because it's this old self dying to this old self, and then this new self is emerging, but you don't know the new you. There's this constant pull to go back to what's familiar and comfort with that, even if it wasn't working. And it's scary, the unknown. The unknown is very, very scary. So it's about just treading lightly and moving gently. And how you know you're going the right way is there'll be less resistance to it. So for example, just a simple test. If you're in a dark night of the soul and you think something like this: I gotta work out tonight. I should work out. There's a lot of shoulds around it. And you think about working out and there's hesitation. So it's like, do I have to? I don't really want to. There's this hesitation. Whenever there's hesitation, it's the wrong way. So the way that you're wanting to move is you're wanting to move into the path of least resistance. It means if laying on the couch feels good, that's the direction you want to go. If stopping trying and stopping the struggle feels good and stopping analyzing, that's the way you want to go. If stopping spiritualizing and figuring it out and so much effort, then that's the way you want to go. And usually that's the thing, when you move into that place, it has this feeling of instant. It's almost like it can be very emotional, especially with emotions. If you're moving into the sadness, you're moving into the grief, you're moving into the sorrow. It can feel really emotional, but when there's a surrender, it's sadness with peace. It's like there's a bit of like a it's like a crying, but with a like a I'm just gonna see what's here. I'm just gonna sit with this. I'm just gonna make this emotion a cup of tea and invite it to stay for a while. So this is the homework, is welcome in those emotions. Welcome in the pain. the anger. Welcome in a different way. And move into the flow. Move into the flow. Stop the resistance. And that will be the first step to moving more gently through a dark night of the soul. It doesn't mean it's going to go away. It just means it might be a little less painful and a little easier to tolerate. So much love to you. Check out my website below. My company name is Liberated Living. I do counseling. I do telephone sessions. I navigate people through these dark nights. A lot of times on the fly. A lot of my clients will call me like they need to talk now. Give me a shout out if you're struggling and need an open heart and a good ear. You'll get through it. You're stronger than you know. Obviously. So much love.